She walked into the captain's quarters wearing the plain gray uniform of a servant, and he looked up from his star charts with eyes that saw straight through her disguise. "You're not who you're pretending to be," Captain Marcus Reid said quietly. An empress like Sera of the Andorian Empire felt her carefully constructed facade crack for the first time in 3 cycles. "But let me take you back to where this impossible story truly began. The treaty was signed in blood, both human and Andorian, after a war that had ravaged 7 star systems and claimed billions of lives. The terms were brutally simple. To ensure lasting peace, the Empress of Andor would marry the human captain who had single-handedly prevented the total annihilation of the Andorian homeworld. Marcus Reid had defied direct orders to destroy Andor Prime, choosing instead to disable their defense grid and force a surrender. His mercy had saved countless lives, but it had also made him a traitor to some and a hero to others. Like Sara had watched the execution of the treaty from her crystal throne, her silver skin gleaming under the ceremonial lights, her people's future weighing on her like gravity itself. She was 26 cycles old, barely considered an adult by Andorian standards, and she had already buried 3 siblings, her parents, and the future she had imagined for herself. The council had made their decision clear. Marry the human or watch the treaty collapse and the war resume. She had accepted. She had no choice, but like Sara was not the type of ruler who walked into traps without testing the ground first. For 3 weeks before the wedding ceremony, she had done something no Andorian Empress had done in 500 years. She had used the ancient morphing technology hidden in the temple vaults to change her appearance completely. Where her silver skin had once shimmered, now appeared the pale complexion of a human woman. Her distinctive violet eyes became a muddy brown. Her height decreased by several inches. Even her biometric signature was scrambled beyond recognition. And then, dressed as Sira, a simple servant assigned to the human captain's temporary quarters on the neutral station, she had walked into his life to discover the truth about the man she was being forced to marry. You see, she needed to know if he was cruel, if he was arrogant, if he saw Andorians as conquered subjects or as equals. The official reports told her nothing of his character, only his military record. And like Sara had learned long ago that a person's true nature only revealed itself when they believed no one of importance was watching. That first day, when Marcus had looked up from his star charts and made that quiet observation, she had felt her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I don't know what you mean, Captain," she had replied, keeping her voice steady and her eyes downcast in the subservient manner she had practiced. He had studied her for a long moment, then returned to his work. "My apologies, you just remind me of someone." Over the next 2 weeks, like Sara served him meals, cleaned his quarters, and observed everything. She watched how he treated the station's staff, with courtesy and respect, regardless of their species. She saw how he stayed up late reviewing casualty reports from both sides of the war, his jaw tight with grief. She noticed the way he refused the luxurious accommodations offered to him, choosing instead a modest room no different from those of his crew. But it was the small moments that undid her carefully maintained emotional distance. Like the time she accidentally dropped a tray of dishes, and instead of reprimanding her, he had knelt beside her to help gather the broken pieces. "It's okay," he had said softly. "They're just things, you're more important than things." Or the evening she found him on the observation deck, staring out at the stars with such profound loneliness in his eyes that she had forgotten herself and asked, "Are you all right, sir?" He had turned to her with surprise, then something that looked almost like gratitude. "Do you ever feel like you're trapped in a life that was chosen for you?" he had asked. "Like every decision that matters has already been made and you're just going through the motions." Like Sara had felt those words pierce her heart like a blade. "Every day," she had whispered, forgetting for a moment that she was supposed to be a simple servant with no such burdens. His eyes had sharpened then, and she saw him truly look at her for the first time. "What's your name?" he had asked. Sira, she had replied, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. Your real name. She had frozen, her mind racing. How could he possibly know? Her disguise was perfect. The technology was infallible. Unless he was seeing something that had nothing to do with appearances. Sera is my real name, she had insisted, but her voice had wavered. Marcus had stepped closer and she had forced herself not to retreat. I've been trained to read people, Sera. It's kept me alive through 100 battles. And everything about you, your posture, your vocabulary, the way you observe rather than just see, tells me you're not a servant. You're someone pretending to be one. Maybe I'm just educated, she had countered, her heart hammering. Maybe, he had agreed. Or maybe you're someone who needs to understand something before committing to it. I respect that. He had paused, then added quietly, I'm doing the same thing, you know, trying to understand who she really is before I marry a stranger. The irony had nearly made her laugh. The Empress. Yes, I've read everything I could find about her. Watched her speeches, studied her decisions during the war, and do you know what I see? Like Sara had shaken her head, unable to speak. Someone who cares deeply about her people. Someone who makes impossible choices because she has to, not because she wants to. Someone who. He had trailed off, his gaze distant. Someone I could respect, maybe even care for if she'd let me. That night, like Sara had returned to her hidden chambers and stood before the mirror, her disguise still in place, tears streaming down her human-appearing face. She had come to test him, to protect herself from potential cruelty. Instead, she had discovered a man who saw past surfaces to the soul beneath. A man who was as trapped by duty as she was. A man who was trying, against all odds, to find something real in an arranged marriage designed purely for politics. But she had also created an impossible problem. The next day, she had made a decision that would either save or destroy everything. She had waited until Marcus was alone in his quarters, reviewing the wedding ceremony protocols with visible distaste. When she entered to deliver his evening meal, she had set down the tray and said, Captain Reid, I need to tell you something. He had looked up, and something in her tone had made him set aside his datapad immediately. I'm listening. What if I told you, she had begun carefully, that the person you've been talking to these past weeks, the one you've shared your thoughts and fears with, is closer than you think to the woman you're about to marry? His brow had furrowed in confusion, then his eyes had widened as understanding began to dawn. That's not possible. The Empress is. Here, like Sara had finished, and she had deactivated the morphing field. The change was instantaneous. Her silver skin returned, shimmering in the artificial light. Her violet eyes blazed with nervous energy. Her height increased, and her features shifted to reveal the face that had been broadcast across 7-star systems during treaty negotiations. She stood before him in servant's clothing, the most powerful woman in the Andorian Empire, completely vulnerable. Marcus had risen slowly from his chair, his expression unreadable. The silence stretched between them like the void of space. You've been testing me, he had said finally. Yes. You didn't trust me. No. She had lifted her chin, refusing to apologize for protecting herself and her people. Good, he had said, and she had blinked in surprise. I wouldn't have trusted me either. If our positions were reversed, I would have done the same thing. Probably would have done worse. Sent spies, run background checks, maybe even staged a few situations to see how I'd react. Despite everything, she had felt a smile tug at her lips. I did all of those things too. That had earned her a laugh, a real one, warm and genuine. Of course you did. You're an empress. A good one from what I've seen. You're not angry. Marcus had walked around the desk to stand in front of her, and for the first time since the war began, like Sara felt like she was being seen, truly seen as herself. Angry? No. Impressed? Absolutely. Do you know how rare it is to meet someone who actually thinks strategically about their own life, instead of just accepting what they're told? That sounds like something a rebel captain would say. Former rebel captain, he had corrected with a wry smile. Now I'm just a man trying to figure out how to build a bridge between two civilizations while everyone on both sides expects me to fail. She had studied his face, seeing the weight he carried, the doubt he hid behind confidence. And if I told you that the woman you described on the observation deck, the one you thought you could respect and maybe even care for, what if I told you she's terrified? That she has no idea how to be a wife when she's spent her entire life being a warrior and a ruler? That she's worried this marriage will destroy both of us because we're too different? Marcus had reached out slowly, giving her time to step back, and had gently taken her hand. The touch had sent electricity through her entire body, a sensation that Andorians rarely experienced, and only with someone they were deeply compatible with. "Then I would tell her," he had said softly, "that I'm terrified too, that I've led soldiers into battle against impossible odds, but the thought of failing at this, at us, keeps me awake at night. That I don't know how to be a husband to an empress when I'm just a captain who got lucky and survived. And that maybe we don't have to figure it out alone." The wedding ceremony, 3 days later, was watched by billions across both civilizations. Sara wore the traditional crystal gown of Andorian empresses, and Marcus wore his military dress uniform, with the medals he had earned removed, his own quiet protest against celebrating a war. They spoke the binding words, mixed their blood in the ceremonial chalice, and sealed the treaty with a kiss that was supposed to be purely symbolic. But when their lips met, Sara felt that electricity again, stronger this time. And when they pulled apart, she saw in Marcus's eyes that he had felt it too. The reception was a careful dance of politics and diplomacy. Andorian nobles who barely hid their disgust at their empress marrying a human. Human officials who saw Marcus as either a traitor or a necessary sacrifice. Representatives from a dozen other species, all watching carefully to see if this unprecedented union would hold or shatter. Sara had played her role perfectly, the serene empress showing no emotion. But when a particularly arrogant Andorian duke had made a cutting remark about lowering herself to human standards, she had felt Marcus's hand tighten slightly on her arm, a silent support. She had turned to the duke with a cold smile. "Duke Thuron, wasn't it your fleet that Captain Reid's squadron defeated at the Battle of Proxima? I believe the tactical analysis called it a masterclass in strategic thinking against overwhelming odds. Perhaps it is we who are raising our standards." The duke had paled and bowed stiffly before retreating. Beside her, Marcus had leaned close enough to whisper, "I think I'm a little bit in love with you right now." She had kept her face composed, but she had whispered back, "Only a little bit." That night, alone in the imperial quarters that would now be theirs, the carefully maintained facades finally crumbled. Marcus had stood by the window overlooking Andor Prime's glittering capital city, his hands clasped behind his back, and said, "I need you to know something." Sara had approached slowly, her ceremonial gown replaced by a simple silver robe. "What is it?" "When I refused to destroy your planet," he had said, his voice rough with emotion, "everyone thought it was mercy, strategic thinking, playing the long game, but the truth is, I had seen your face in one of the intercepted broadcasts. You were addressing your people, telling them to be strong, that you would protect them or die trying, and I thought—" He had paused, struggling with words. "I thought that anyone who cared that much about their people deserved a chance. That maybe peace was possible if both sides had someone willing to choose it." Sara had felt tears sting her eyes. "You saved billions of lives because of a broadcast." "I saved them because of you," he had said simply, turning to face her. "And I didn't even know you yet. Now that I do." He had reached for her hand again, that electric connection sparking between them. "Now I think maybe I was supposed to find you, even in the middle of a war, even when everything was trying to tear us apart." She had closed the distance between them, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, so different from Andorian physiology, yet somehow perfectly in sync with her own. "Do you know what this means?" She had asked, her voice barely above a whisper. This connection we feel. Tell me. In Andorian culture, it's called the soul resonance. It happens maybe once in 1,000 lifetimes. It means. She had taken a shaky breath. It means that despite everything, the war, the treaty, the political machinations, we were meant to find each other. Marcus had cupped her face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Then, I guess the universe has better plans than the politicians. Their kiss this time was nothing like the ceremonial one. This was real, raw, filled with all the fear and hope and desperate need for connection that they had both been carrying. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard like Sera had laughed, actually laughed for the first time in years. "What?" Marcus had asked, smiling. "I was so worried about what kind of man you were," she had said. "I disguised myself, tested you, prepared for every possible scenario. And it turns out the only thing I wasn't prepared for was actually falling for you." He had pulled her close, his arms wrapped securely around her. "I spent weeks reading everything about you, trying to understand who you were. And then you walked into my quarters as Sira, and I knew within 5 minutes that something was different about you. I just didn't realize you were exactly who I was looking for." The months that followed were not easy. There were assassination attempts from extremists on both sides, political challenges from those who wanted the treaty to fail, constant scrutiny and pressure, and the weight of 2 civilizations resting on their shoulders. But there were also moments of profound joy. Like the morning Sara had found Marcus in the palace gardens, covered in dirt because he was trying to grow earth flowers in Andorian soil as a surprise for her. "They're called roses," he had explained sheepishly. "I thought maybe we could create something that belonged to both our worlds." Or the state dinner where a human ambassador had made a racist comment about Andorian appearance, and Marcus had stood up, removed his ceremonial sash, and said, "Gentlemen, I've discovered something interesting about Andorian physiology. When they bond with someone, their skin develops these beautiful patterns of light, like this." He had turned to Sara, and she had allowed the bonding marks to show, intricate patterns of light that swirled across her skin in response to his presence. "Isn't it magnificent? This is what love looks like in a culture that's thousands of years older than ours. Maybe we should be humble enough to learn from it." The ambassador had resigned the next day. 6 months into their marriage, Sara had convened an emergency session of the Unified Council. Marcus had been in the middle of fleet exercises when he received the summons, and he had returned to Andor Prime with his heart in his throat, terrified something had gone wrong. He had burst into the council chambers to find Sara standing at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays of both human and Andorian territories. She had turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "What's wrong?" he had demanded. "Nothing's wrong," she had said calmly. "But I've made a decision, and I wanted you to hear it first before it becomes public record." Marcus had approached slowly, aware of the dozens of council members watching them. "What decision?" Sara had gestured to the displays. "For 500 years, the Andorian Empire has been ruled by a single sovereign. But we're not an empire anymore, Marcus. We're part of something new, something that requires a different kind of leadership." She had taken his hand, and the bonding marks had flared across her skin. "I'm establishing a dual sovereignty. You're not just my consort, you're my co-ruler. Every decision we make together, every policy, every treaty, every future path, we choose it as equals." The council had erupted in shocked debate, but Marcus had only had eyes for his wife. "Sara, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she had interrupted firmly. "Because that's what you've taught me. That strength isn't about holding power alone. It's about sharing it with someone you trust completely. And I trust you, Marcus. With my life, with my people, with everything." He had pulled her into his arms right there in front of the entire council, political propriety be damned. "I love you," he had said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I love you, and I will spend every day of my life proving that I'm worthy of this trust." "You already have," she had whispered back. Now, standing in their quarters a year after that first encounter, like Sara watched the sun rise over the blended architecture of the new capital city, buildings that combined Andorian crystal technology with human design, a physical manifestation of two cultures learning to coexist. Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "About a servant named Sira," she said softly, "who walked into a captain's quarters looking for